Hello and welcome to the Patty Pod, Season 2, Episode 19, the season finale. I hope everyone's doing well. This is the season finale. We'll get into in a little bit why that is. Partly it's because I think it's just a good time to wrap it up for this season. Feel like just at one of those breaks. I don't want to just keep doing this just to do it every couple weeks. I want to make it high quality for the peeps. So we're going to take a little break. Kind of a lot has happened since I last spoke to you all in the last episode. I found out my school is closing. They announced that they're going to close at the end of this school year. So that's big news. This is my 6th year there. And I wasn't hugely surprised at this announcement. The enrollment's been going down. But I was sort of hopeful that there'd be one more year. There was some mention of doing summer camp originally, so I kind of thought that might mean we'd do another year. But alas, it's not to be the case. There is some chance that some version of the school keeps going. Upon hearing the announcement, a number of parents banded together and have begun trying to find a way to keep some version of the school going, but it's not probably going to happen, be my guess. We'll see. There's a few ideas being floated around. So that's part of why I'm going to wrap up this season. I'm going to have to spend some of my free time thinking about my next step. I probably will teach elementary school. That's my thought. I don't know if I'm going to try to become a specialist. Maybe move into more the middle school realm. And focus on one subject. I do teach 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 6th grade is definitely middle school at a lot of schools, even 5th grade at some schools, so we'll have to see. I'm working through all that myself. I was kind of in a holding pattern in the last 2 weeks after I heard, just trying to see, because there was talk amongst the parents of trying to figure out something else, so I was kind of waiting and seeing. And I was processing. It was kind of a lot to process. Even though I knew it was a strong possibility, I kind of still had a bigger emotional response. So we'll get into that in a little bit. I've been visiting the Met every weekend. That's continued. Last week I looked at some of the Hellenistic art. I also have been going on free tours, which are excellent. There's a spot, I think I may have mentioned this before, if you just show up, there's a sign that says free tours meet here, and every hour or every half an hour or so they have a tour. A number of the ones I've been on have been highlights at the museum, where the tour guide will seemingly choose some of their favorites, and it is kind of a good way to experience the breadth of the museum, of its collections. So I did that. It did end up in the Hellenistic, Roman, and Greek art section, and I stayed in those galleries on Saturday, took some photos. I'll probably do a little slideshow for my students. I've been doing that. Last week I did Islamic art, and prior to that I did some of the Harlem Renaissance exhibition that I'd gone to, that we'd been studying in our class. So this week was Hellenistic. It was an interesting period. It was sort of a flowering of the Greek and Roman world. The Hellenistic period, something around 350 BCE, and began with the death of Alexander the Great and his conquests, as violent and disruptive as they must have been to the people that he conquered. They also brought about a fair amount of intercultural exchange and some political stability, as sort of empires can often do. When there's one big, strong government, others aren't vying for the number one position, and sometimes there's a bit of a peace. The Pax Romana is how it's been referred to in the Roman example, the Peace of Rome, as well as the Pax Americana in the 20th and early 21st century. Certainly not peaceful for everybody in those regimes, but not as much state-to-state or nation-to-nation conflict. In any case, during this time, there was a sort of an increase in the production of art and economic activity, and the Met has a number of pretty outstanding examples of some fresco paintings from the walls of villas that were in a town. I can't remember the name of the town, but it was sort of a vacation town. The docent, or the tour guide, described it as sort of the Hamptons of Rome, sort of a place a ways away from the city that was a place where people, the wealthy, had their summer villas. There was a scene with a couple that was getting married. The husband was nude, in a heroic nude posture or pose, and the wife was fully clothed, which is sort of the reverse of those kind of couplings that we've seen in later Western art. Oftentimes we have the nude woman, of course, lounging or in repose, and oftentimes there's other figures that are clothed around her, sometimes men. But in this case, I guess in ancient Rome, it was seen as heroic to be in this nude setting, or in this nude condition. I guess perhaps it's related to the nude athletes showing off their exquisite physiques. Anyway, the wife, also the docent said that the wife was had a typically morose expression on her face, which was, I guess, typical of wedding scenes, which is sad to say, I guess. I don't know. I guess, I don't know if that's a comment on marriage or if that was a particular comment on the role of wives in ancient Rome. I hope it's the latter. But I sort of thought that was interesting and sort of amusing, that they didn't they weren't selling the happy couple as we see today in our current culture, wedding photos. There was also a bunch of sculptures in bronze, which is pretty rare, and there was a particular gallery that had, they called it treasury, Hellenistic treasury, and it had all these really exquisite precious metals and jewelry, and there was these really elaborate cuffs, these like decorative cuffs that a woman would wear that was all gold with this kind of snake wrapping around. It was pretty incredible. There was also this hairnet, they called it, which looked like it would go around the bun of a woman's hair. If she put her hair into a bun, then this would attach onto it, and it had this gold band around kind of a circle, and then it had this filigree, which I learned is little interlocking chain. That was all gold, and it sort of was evenly spaced out. So that was quite beautiful as well. I enjoyed that. In this main hall, outside of these smaller gallery rooms, was this big grand space that has a lot of the ancient Roman and Greek sculpture. Some really exquisite stuff. There was one of an athlete tying a band around his head. I think I may have spoken of this before. And that's some kind of a laurel or some kind of mark of achievement, these bands. And you often see Roman sculpture or Greek sculpture in that pose. Sometimes the arms are broken off, but if they were complete, the arms would be up, and you can kind of tell the arms are up, but in the ones that are broken, what you can't tell is that they're up because the figure was tying this band around its head. So I like sports, and I kind of like to see, anything that's kind of from the classical antiquity, as they say, and sculpture from that time can put these figures literally on a pedestal. So they often do these idealized bodies as well, so it's kind of glamorous and heroic. I enjoyed that. My world of sports and art coming together in one sculpture, or in a few different sculptures. So that was the weekend. I had a funny moment. The woman, I had asked a few questions, and just chatted a bit with the docent. She was probably in her late 50s. And there was another woman in her late 50s who looked like could be her sister. The other woman was in the tour group. And they just looked very similar in their style and even their physical appearance. And they looked to be almost exactly the same age. And at the end, the woman from the group came up to me and said, "When are you going to ask her out?" Meaning the tour guide, the docent. And I was like, I'm not. She was like, "Wasn't she great? Blah, 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 blah. She's so cute." And she's going on and on. And I said, "Yeah, I'm married." And she's like, "Oh, you didn't have your ring on." And I said, "Yeah, I know. I took my ring off during COVID because I went through this infectious disease training as a teacher, and there was some mention of germs getting in jewelry, so I just was being extra careful, took it off, and I've never really wanted to put it back on because of the germs." But she, so anyway, I was like, I don't wear my ring since COVID. And she's like, "Oh, well, yeah, blah, 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 blah." And I just like, I thought it was such an odd thing to say. I'm usually pretty open to talking to strangers. I kind of like it. I like when strangers talk to me, but that one I thought was odd. And then I kind of walked away and I thought, I think this lady maybe just wants to think that people that look like her still got it. That was my takeaway. I don't know. Because I was not being flirtatious. I was being friendly, maybe. And I suppose sometimes my Midwestern friendliness comes off that way. But I don't know. I was a little surprised. Didn't see that one coming. So that was a fun little moment on the weekend. I booked some trips. I'm going to Ireland for part of our spring break. I guess the reason why I'm coming to you from the living room. Boy, I didn't announce my locale. That's a hallmark of the Patty Pod. I am in the living room. Kate is at work. It is 4:35 in the afternoon. It is April 1st, I believe. Let me double check. Yes, April 1st. The reason I'm here is because we are on a little break. My school normally does 10 school days off in the spring for spring break. But because Easter and Passover weren't close together this year, we did a 4-day weekend for Easter, and that's why I'm home today. And then we're going to do 1 day for Eid, and then we're going to do a full 5-day week off at the end of April, and then an additional 2 days after that week. That'll bring us to 10 school days. And so I am home. It is, we didn't really celebrate Easter. I don't really celebrate Easter. I am a fan of Jesus. I just don't sort of slide into the Christian world per se. So I didn't celebrate Easter. Kate obviously doesn't, is a Jewish woman or raised culturally Jewish. But I do have this time off. For that long week that we have off, I did book a trip to Ireland. I'm going to be visiting my parents. They live there for part of the year. And then during that week, I'm going to take a little quick trip to Glasgow to visit my friend Mark, who I met in college through a friend. He dated a friend of mine in college, and we became friends, and he actually spent some time with me in Minneapolis. Happened to know somebody in Minneapolis. It was a really extraordinary coincidence. I was introducing him to my roommate, and they got to talking, and soon they found out they knew the same person. They both knew this guy quite well. The guy that they knew was the manager of my friend's band, my friend Mark's band, and he was the boyfriend of my roommate's good friend in Minneapolis. So that was a crazy coincidence. It kind of kicked off this fun friendship that he had with me and a bunch of my friends from college. So I'm going to see him again. I haven't seen him since 2014 when he came to New York and came to Brooklyn, and we had a little hangout. So I'm going to go to Glasgow and hang out with him and see the sights of Glasgow as much as I can. I'm doing about 36 hours, well, maybe 48. Yeah, closer to 45 hours or so in Glasgow. So wish me well. I hope it's going to be fun. I'm sure it will be. I'm looking forward to seeing new things, going to another country, going to a new country. I'm also looking to just hanging out in Ireland with my family, my parents, and some of their friends. So yeah, things are good. What can I say? I'll talk a little bit about my school closing since I brought that up. I wrote a little bit about it a week ago or so. It is a mixed emotion, so I'll just read what I wrote. I'll say there's two parts of me. These days, I know this is a Category 1 change, and I'm sad and nervous. I'm sad that I have to leave what has felt like my work home. I'm nervous about not knowing what's next. The other part of me sees a vast sea of opportunity that comes with 6 years of teaching experience, 11 years of corporate experience, a creative mindset, living in New York City, and living in the internet era. I'm in the first part at the moment, but experiencing flashes of the second and moving in that direction. After feeling the shock of the news and not sleeping well the first few nights, I cried a bit in a meeting on the matter and felt a good release. I felt calmer and could think more clearly. I've rested better since then, but still waves of grief and moments of I still feel waves of grief and moments of apprehension. I will try as I always do to let the emotion flow, even as I point my mind toward a more hopeful future. So that was where I was at like a week ago. I feel kind of the same this weekend. I've shifted more into active mode, and I guess maybe more into optimistic mode. I didn't do anything in terms of looking for a new job for the first 2 weeks. I was trying to see how things might play out with the group of parents that tried to keep our school going, and how things might play out with any interested parties that were potentially going to merge with us or so on, or acquire us. But it felt like it was time to get going, so I told myself before this long 4-day weekend that I was going to, on Monday, kind of get to it at some point, if not before then. So I did on Saturday, looked a little bit about researching other schools in Brooklyn, other what I call enlightened schools, or progressive. I hesitate to use the progressive term because it can be so associated with certain kinds of politics, and I'm not necessarily looking for a particularly political school, but I do want something that has what I think is more an enlightened approach to education, which I think my school does. A lot of that's about not seeing children as receptacles that you try to stuff full of something that they're supposed to spit back at you. Rather, seeing learning as like an ongoing process and a mode of living. I read something today that said that education in this one school's view was a way of living, not preparation for living, and I like that a lot. So I'm trying to find schools like that have a similar view as me, that also want to attend to social and emotional issues and have a sense of fun, and let kids' natural curiosity and passions drive a lot of their schooling. So hopefully I'll find something. I've seen a few places that seem to espouse those values, and I kind of started the process today. It was good to kind of break through that initial resistance that I always have to big change and kind of get going. So I got one cover letter written. I researched this one school. I spoke to somebody at their school, and I'm going to be sending off a letter and a resume, and that process will probably continue. So that's part of why, I'm going to wrap up this season. I'm going to get busy with that other stuff. This is kind of a busy time of the school year, too, for us. I will I'll do the essay corner real quick. This is from the summer. I think this is the last essay I wrote, too, so it does feel like kind of a natural stopping place. Well, let's get into it. For this installment of Visit a New Place, Then Write, I went to the Park Slope branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. It was my last week of summer break, and I was feeling a little restless and really didn't know what to do with myself. I decided to hop on my bike and just crisscross the main avenues of Brooklyn's Park Slope, a neighborhood both desirable and leafy, as they say. I thought I'd just ride until I saw something that caught my eye. Not wanting to spend too much money, I thought maybe I'd head into a new coffee shop or just duck into an open church. However, I had just been to a new coffee shop, and I discovered that some of the churches in this neighborhood remain closed outside of their worship times. As I was riding and not feeling any pull in any direction, just kind of enjoying the exercise, I spotted the library. It was small, but had a kind of old world charm and grandeur with its brick walls and columned entrance. My wife used to visit when we lived in the area, and I always meant to stop in, but never had. In my early and mid-20s, I spent a lot of time in libraries. I was trying to become an intellectual and felt there was a mountain of books that I needed to read. I often felt that I wanted to get out of my apartment, and I knew I could go to libraries and coffee shops for very little to no money. As I left academia in my later 20s, I dropped the quest to become an intellectual and entered the world of work. Doing so took up most of my time, and in the evenings and on weekends, I wanted to be at home or out with my friends. Upon entering, I noticed just how small a branch library normally is. This one was shaped like a T, but the top part was bigger than the middle part. The place was pretty full, which disappointed me a bit, but I found a padded chair at one end of the long top part of the T. It was the last open padded chair, and I was glad to get it. I always searched for padded chairs and was quite glad to get one when I hung out in libraries in the past. They seemed to make all the difference, and appreciating this one brought me back to appreciating the simple things in life. I had gotten away from that a bit this summer when I worried about how to best use my free time. The bike ride was fairly short, but I felt nicely fatigued from it and ready to sit and read. As I've gotten to the end of the summer, I've had a harder time feeling settled with any activity, so I cherish the moment. I also noted my spirits were lifted by the architecture. The place looked old world inside as well, with wood paneling that went high up the wall and an ornate fireplace with a large relief sculpture of classical figures above. The paneling looked new and wasn't too dark, and the ceilings were very high, nearly 2.5 stories. The top of the walls were a light yellow. Everything combined to give a sense of lightness and a bit of dignity. The place was funded by Andrew Carnegie, and while I'm not sure I'm okay with the kind of wealth he compiled, I was grateful the building was built in the style that it was. I was also grateful that it had been kept up. In addition to the paneling, the sculpture, and some tile looked quite new. I thought of King Charles, and while I'm not comfortable with the king and his wealth and the wealth his family compiled, I've come to appreciate his view on the importance of architecture. I looked around and thought the height of those ceilings was worth way more than the extra cost they incurred. They gave some sense to the majesty of the souls that sit beneath them. Okay, a little bungled reading there. I'll get better, don't worry. What else do I want to say? I also went this weekend to Urban Air, which is a trampoline park here in Brooklyn. I think there's a little bit of a chain. I was a little nervous because I had heard it's a bit crazy. I even heard a comedian once on a podcast say that his daughter broke her leg there at that particular Urban Air. So I was quite cautious, although I knew my niece and nephew told me that they loved the place, and I gave it to them. I gave a day there as a gift to them for Christmas and Hanukkah. So definitely was going to follow through. So we finally got a chance to go. The kids had an absolute ball. I had a ball. It feels good to just jump. I saw something on Instagram today about somatic dancing, where you just kind of shake your body like all around, like kind of just shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. That's supposed to help with anxiety and depression and whatever. It's kind of funny. Sidebar. It's just when I saw it, I felt like a comment on our world where you're getting 8 million different pieces of advice for everything, right? Like if you think you have anxiety or depression, there's probably 8 million different things that are coming at you if you're on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat or whatever. Anyway, but it makes some sense to me after the somatic dancing makes sense to me after my experience at the trampoline park. It did feel good just to bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce and bounce. I went on the trampolines with the kids, I guess, as you can tell. And I just kind of wanted to be near them at all times because it is a little wild. Kids are running all over the place. There's like these big areas that have these trampolines kind of they're sort of rectangular. And then on the wall, there's kind of one that's angled so you can kind of jump and hit the side and come back. And there's rows and columns. It's just a grid. And it seems like most kids are going back and forth one way, but then there are these renegade kids that are just running across the rows like mad. And I can only imagine. I can only imagine how many kids get smoked out there on the trampoline. It was a little bit much for a teacher to withstand. So I stayed by the niece and nephew. I wasn't like restraining their movements or their fun. But it was a ball. It was a ball. So that was a total moment of joy. You know, being with the niece and the nephew, it's always fun, and to go somewhere that they really like and see them having all that fun was really very fun for me. So I love that. I'm gonna try to do more, have more moments like that. I'll get to the fashion corner. Probably never officially named it that, but I should have. There's been a couple things that I've been thinking about. I can't wear sweaters or sweatshirts without pulling up the sleeves. I've realized that this week. I don't know why that's happening. I don't know what's happening. I incessantly tug at my sleeves and pull them up, pull them up, pull them up. Anytime I'm wearing a sweatshirt or a sweater, it's like I can't have them down on my wrists. I don't know what is going on. The phrase roll up our sleeves comes to mind. I don't know if that's what's going on. If I've got some kind of, for whatever reason, Obama comes in my head when I think of that. Well, we're gonna roll up our sleeves here and we're gonna get right to it. And so I don't know if that's what or somebody, you know, maybe a teacher or a coach, you know, telling me we got to roll up our sleeves somewhere deep in my subconscious, but I keep pulling them up. Am I trying to show that I'm ready to get after it at all times? Is that what I'm doing? I'm not sure what I'd be getting after, but yeah, it's kind of crazy to me. And then I start worrying that I'm going to stretch out the cuffs because they're getting so high up, my massive forearms. And also my elbows. When they get around the elbow, I do start worrying. So it's a whole thing. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll just start to roll like they taught me in the second grade. Don't tug, just roll up the sleeves. I'm going to have to start thinking about that. I think maybe in the subconscious somewhere, I think it looks cool too. That's another theory. This makes sense to me. I think there was a lot of pulled sleeves in the 80s. There's a lot of that going on. A lot of guys pushing up their sleeves all the way up to the elbow. I seem to have that image in my mind, like something out of 16 Candles. You know, a pair of Wayfarers and some smashed up sleeves. I don't know. I think that's it. I'm going to have to think more about that. Anything to look cool. I also want to talk about popped collars. Another totally 80s thing. Now I'm starting to put some things together. I do this with my coat. And I that was a real iffy move for me. It was sort of like the sweaters, you know. I would often do the sweater over the shoulders and tie the little knot. I spoke about that before and how dangerously close that was to a male Buffy from the country club. But I did it anyways because I couldn't think of a better solution. By the way, I did do the solution I talked about, the messy, where you you put the sweater over your shoulders like you're going to be the country club, but then you sweep one sleeve over your neck like a scarf. I did do that this weekend at Urban Air, of all places. But in any case, the pop collar, I never do it with shirts, but with coats, I've got these coats that I kind of longer coats that could be overcoats for a suit, but you can also wear them with like jeans and khakis and stuff, and that's what I do. And I do pop them up, but it's a very careful thing. I pop them up, and then I push it back ever so slightly so that the flaps go back, so it's not full up. It's a difficult maneuver to pull off and to maintain, especially, but I'm going with it. And I have it in two coats. I think it's okay. I think it looks cool, not douchey, which is so hard to pull off. That's every man's dream. Let's be honest. That's all of our dreams. So I had that going on. Walked out on my way to the Met. Had my sunglasses on. Had my leather gloves in my hand, looking what I thought was cool. And as far as you guys know, because it's a podcast, was super cool, which is great. In any case, and then I saw my Eastern European neighbor, a young man across the street. He's really been blossoming in his fashion journey. There's that word, journey. And I saw him as it's been 10 years that we've been here. So he was, I think, 13 or so when we moved in, and now he's 23. Feeling himself. My man has got tinted glasses, almost R&B style, and some really serious gold chain going on. I was kind of shocked, and I think when I had the sunglasses on, the pop collar, we just sort of like acknowledged each other. Like, that's right. Yeah, game respects game, I think is what that was. His is Eastern European, my more North American way. It felt like a good moment. I was happy to have it. I'll talk a little bit. We're going to circle over the spiritual corner for just a minute. Hard right. I saw some people at the museum at the Met, and I don't know why it's hit me, but I had this feeling again about oneness with the body. I don't know if I've talked about this, but it struck me, that our bodies are so similar. Of course, there's differences, and people are so hyper-focused on whatever difference they don't like about themselves. If they're, their belly's too big, or they're too short, or they're whatever, don't have the hair they want, or don't have the booty they want, or whatever, right? But actually, our bodies are so similar. Like an elbow, right? Or how different is an elbow, my elbow, from your elbow, compared to a tree, or compared to an automobile, right? Or compared to a hockey stick. They're quite similar. And that's true of, a lot of our bodies, our lungs, our feet. And so it's like, I had the feeling that your body's not really your body, It's, first of all, your body began as your parents' body. It was their cells first, and their bodies weren't really theirs. Their cells, bodies took in food and water, and their cells took those in, and those materials eventually, those nutrients helped replace the very materials of their cells. And it's also about getting back to how your body's similar to other bodies. It's your species body almost more than your body. It's like the species that, evolved this body. And, is your nose really so different than someone else's nose? It's such a human nose. And what about your ears? Are they so different? Your ears not really just like other ears, more than they're like anything else? So that really struck me. I think it speaks to our oneness again. They say losing a child is the most painful thing that a human can experience, but I don't know. I've heard Nickelback. Am I piling on? Well, that's okay. We can pile on to Nickelback if you've heard him. I've seen some Viagra ads recently. They always say in those ads, ask your doctor if your heart is healthy enough for sex. They never follow up on that. That's all they say. What they should say is, if your heart is not healthy enough for sex, stop everything you're doing immediately. Look, hang in there. There's some experimental research going on in Iran. A clinical trial. I don't know how you're going to get there. I understand there's a travel ban. Look, where there's a will, there's a way. Do you want to go on like this? Do you call this a life? That's how they should end. That's how we're going to end. It's been a lovely season. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. I'm not sure when season 3 will come, but it will come. And I look forward to doing some more. If you're enjoying the podcast, do me a big favor. Share it with some friends. You could rate and review it on whatever platform you're listening to it on. That would be really helpful. And what I like the most is if you send me a little note or a message. Do it on social if we're connected, or you could even send me an email. BROOP045@gmail. BROOP045@gmail. Hope everyone's doing really well, and I hope I get to see all of you at some point soon. Peace and love.